Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So that is God. I want to review again that the unity power of understanding is the awakening of our own faculty of understanding that starts with questioning. Charles Fillmore says, understanding is different from wisdom. He defines wisdom as intuitive knowing, spiritual intuition, and understanding, again, is the ability of the mind to apprehend and realize the laws of thought and the relation of ideas to one another. So to put it more simply, wisdom knows, understanding knows why. And Charles Fillmore says, when your understanding is developed in both head and feet, not only will you have the light in mind, but you will also have the ability to apply it in your world. That sound good? So I think the most important thing that we can get at university, at Unity, is a new understanding of just what God is. Isn't that the question we all ask? What is it? Every time we say our prayer for protection, I'm reminded that a few years ago we changed the wording for the prayer of protection. And it had huge significance for me and led to a much greater understanding. And as I've said before, I'm sure James Still at Freeman wouldn't mind, because he, like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, was cutting edge for his time. They were constantly challenging the status quo and their own thinking. Charles Fillmore is famous for the quote, "I reserve the right to change my mind." And some of the most prominent leaders in the unity movement and the New Thought movement, and indeed the lay authors that are into self-awareness and self-development, all say that, personal growth. Re-examining our ideas and seeing how our ideas relate to one another. That's how we come together. Now, Dr. Paul Hasselbeck, who for a while was dean at the Unity Spiritual Institute, and he's author of the book Metaphysical Heart-Centered Metaphysics, and he was one of my teachers at Unity Village. And he is possibly the person most responsible for bringing unity into the 21st century. And during a class where I expressed some discomfort with the language because I was not brought up in the Christian tradition, he said to me, "I am eliminating all Christian language from my writing." Why? In order to be relevant to those of us who are thinking for ourselves, who are working hard for self-knowledge and self-awareness, those of us who don't just swallow a doctrine whole and then have to live through that filter throughout our whole lives. And those who realize that some of the Christian ideas that were gifted to us or foisted upon us, I'm going to check this because it's making a noise, isn't it? Are beautiful and loving and empowering, and some of those ideas are poison to our souls. And so he wants to be relevant to those of us who are committed to a faith path that works, that we can actually own and believe in, and it works for ourselves and our world. So this self-knowledge is hard work. It's deep work. We're not playing in the shallow end here. And sometimes when people come to unity, they think unity is a little bit fluffy, a little bit airy-fairy. We do our affirmations and we think positive thinking, and sometimes these phrases that stumble out of our mouths are all platitudes, like, it's all good, it's all God, I'll call it good, yay, I'm so happy all the time. No, I'm not angry, all that stuff. The thing is, don't say those things to somebody who's just been diagnosed with cancer or is in deep grief. You can say them to yourself anytime, but understand where people are at the moment. So there's depth required in our work. That fluffy stuff sometimes covers up our dark side, our shadow, our ugly twin, as someone calls it. You have an ugly twin that shows up once in a while? The important thing is just knowing about her or him, that ugly twin. And then you know what derails us and what we have to listen to. So it's good work to get to know your ugly twin a little bit. Charles Fillmore called it the adverse ego. When we empower that ugly twin and allow her stuff into our space, we start to follow that down the rabbit hole, don't we? We do. We move away from our spiritual nature and from our grounding and back into sense consciousness. So we can't just ignore these ugly twins, a shadow or whatever it is, that adverse ego that speaks to us, because it's like a kid. You know, when you ignore them, they demand even more attention, right? So we have to acknowledge her, hear her, try to understand her, comfort her, reassure her, consider those thoughts, and get to understand all of ourselves. Because the truth of what we are, and for me this is the Christian teaching, is that we are Christ. Christ defined as a spark or glimmer of the divine. That's the message for me in Christianity. The I am, the potential, the Buddha nature, the universal mind, call it what you will. We are a wonderful oneness and presence and infinite potential. But that all gets covered up sometimes with who I think I am and who I'm afraid I am. Anybody? Who I think I am, that's usually the good stuff. Who I'm afraid I am is that adverse ego stuff that I don't want you to know about me, right? Even before Unity, I knew about my ugly twin. I didn't call her that. I called her PMS, or getting up on the wrong side of the bed, or being depressed, you know. But I know that when my ugly twin is here, there's not much in me that's nice. And whatever niceness there is in me, I reserve that to a few people closest to me, right? I really do have a big, ugly twin. But the grown-up thing to do is to communicate to those we love and to those that we have to work with what's going on with us. I'm sorry. I got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Please don't take me seriously. That kind of takes the sting out of things, doesn't it? And if there's really something serious going on with you, if you have ADHD or Tourette's syndrome or a personality disorder, it's a service to people that it affects if you let them know so that they can understand you better. They can understand where your ideas are coming from. So there are parts of me that I don't want you to know about, so I make up another person, right? Like today, I'm pretending to be a minister. Doing a pretty good job, I think. But that's why I love theater, right? You know, Joanne and I, we just love theater because we can get up there and be and do all the things that we're afraid to do in real life. So another pretend self of mine is the angel. You know, that's how I want to be, how I want you to think of me. Or I wish I was. That I want them to think I'm so spiritual. I put on this spiritual icing, I call it. We all get enlightened and loving and happy all the time. There used to be a song when I first came into New Thought that was called that. I'm so happy all the time. Ugh. And we try to convince ourselves that we've overcome our egos. You know that? You got to overcome your ego? No, you don't. Your ego is a very valuable thing. It has a purpose. It helps you to survive in physical existence, right? We need that. We need that development of our personality. But it also helps us accomplish things. It helps us succeed in life, how to get things done. Anyway, back to the prayer for protection. So we used to say, and many people still do because this is the original, was much simpler. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. The presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. And I still use that in a pinch. You know, something's going on right away, quick. But except for the last line, wherever I am, God is, that kind of put God out there, the love of God. The word of is a possessive. That's something somebody owns or something somebody has. So when we say the light of God, the love of God, it's the light God has, the power that God has, the presence that God has. Well, where did God get all that stuff? Who or what gave that to God? So when we've changed that to the light that is God, the love that is God, to me, that made it corrects the image of God as man. Now, Myrtle Fillmore, she overcame that perception of God as a big human, and she knew that God was essence, spirit, and without form. Thomas talked extensively last week about Myrtle Fillmore and her healing process. She suffered from what was diagnosed in those days as chronic tuberculosis. I think that was a fairly common diagnosis. It did not respond to her ordinary faith and prayer. And she said, I finally asked the Lord just why it was that I did not get well. Now you could read from that when she was talking to an outside God there, from a very traditional point of view, which is no doubt how she started out, as most of us were originally taught, right? God up in heaven. But Myrtle realized that God is not a being with parts like a man. God is principle or mind. So when she said she asked the Lord for healing, she's no longer praying to an outside God. She's speaking to her higher self. You speak to yourself? All those little conversations when you're at the computer, when you're at the market trying to remember what it was you were supposed to buy. But do you also give yourself encouragement? Come on, Patricia, you can do this. I know you can. You can do that. You did that. You did that. You can do this. I talk to myself all the time. And I answer myself all the time. But I don't believe there's two of me. I talk to my higher self, the higher presence within me, that higher aspect, which is what Myrtle did. So she said, finally, I explained that I had gone all through my consciousness to see what it was that held me back. She tried to find the fault in her thinking, and we do that at Unity. When we're experiencing stuff we don't particularly like, we look what our thoughts have created, and we don't judge ourselves on that. We just use that as a tool. And that's hard work. That's playing in the deep end, right? It's the willingness to take responsibility for our own experiences, and that involves discovering our error thoughts. That's how we reach understanding. But we must not move into guilt about that. Never mistake responsibility for blame. We need to pursue self-awareness without self-condemnation. So Myrtle didn't condemn herself, she just looked for the errors, and therefore the answers within herself. So don't move into what we call metaphysical guilt, and don't move into metaphysical malpractice, which is when you say to somebody who's experiencing something tough, well, what are you holding in your consciousness? Don't do that. And it's interesting, nobody ever asks that question when good stuff happens, right? You won the lottery, what were you holding in consciousness? Do you ever hear anybody do that? No, they don't. So back to Myrtle. She goes on, my higher self said to me, you have looked among your faults, now look among your virtues. Oh. You have looked among your faults, now look among your virtues. It could be that something that you consider virtuous is actually costing you something, keeping you from knowing yourself. What a concept. So she looked at her virtues and she came to an awareness. She said, I have tried to keep my feelings to myself, taking great pride in the fact that I never let anyone know when something displeased me. Myrtle had an adverse ego too. Anybody have that in their ugly twin? They never let you speak your mind, never let you say what you really think, right? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, right? So that's a supposed virtue that could be getting in your way. And my mother always said that. And I, when I first got involved in this personal growth stuff, I blamed my mother because I'd never learned to express, my hurts and things. Later on, I came back to realize my mother was right. But what Myrtle said is, I found that I did not feel as sweet and poised on the inside as I did on the outside. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. All those things we didn't say might be eating us up inside. However, be careful how you share what's there. When you share with the people that you got up on the wrong side of the bed, then the energy is diffused. There's no energy wasted in trying to keep it in, right? And then you have more energy for the good stuff. But you need to state your truth without acting it out, without the drama around it, without the accusations and the blame. And that's why we keep it in, because we're afraid we're going to offend somebody, right? So we need to communicate responsibly. When we're hit by a truck, we don't say, count it all good. We say, no, I've been run over. I need to stop and handle this, right? So Myrtle concluded, I began to watch and to redeem this state of mind. I determined to handle all that came to me before I swallowed it and allowed it to irritate, cut, and weaken my nerves and organs. As I regained real poise, not fake poise, not the pretend self, and the ability to keep my thoughts and feelings truly free, I was healed and restored to strength and normal function. So, who or what actually healed Myrtle Fillmore? The power of God or the power that is God and that is present within Myrtle and you and me? But let that be the beginning statement. Let be where we start to handle it. Well, this is what I have. This is what I sow. This is what's so. This is what's going on. Be truthful about it. And then I decide, like Myrtle, to deal with everything, to handle everything, and not swallow it. And I do that. I can figure out a way to use it for good generally. Because my essence is good, and the essence of everything ultimately is good. So tell your truth, whether it be good or bad, happy or sad. But just tell it. Don't act on it. And do your affirmations and accept responsibility. No pity party. No pity party. Doesn't get anybody anywhere with. Back in the olden days, we used to say, act as if, and fake it till you make it. Okay, good. But be honest with yourself. The reason to act as if is not to deny your circumstances, but in order to create a channel of conscious behavior that will eventually become natural. Right? So, how are you today? I'm happy, rich, and good looking, thanks. I mean, I say that every day. I don't always mean it. But it's becoming more and more natural. Right? So when we say there's one power in presence, what's the next part of that? We said it this morning. There's one power and presence. And it's not out there. It's active in the universe and in my life. That one power, the same power that hung the stars in the sky, is the power that heals my body and responds to my thought. So whatever comes, we can use it for good when we're self-aware. It's not all good all the time, but we can create good of it when we're conscious, when we're aware, and when we know ourselves, even the evil twin part of ourselves. So examine your ideas. See how your good ideas are, and see how your good ideas are related to your mistaken ideas. You know what? I don't mind being wrong. I always figure if you're wrong, you learn something. And if you're wrong, chances are you got to make somebody else right. What a gift that is, right? So you can use that adverse ego, that ugly twin, whatever it is, to enhance the divine being that you already are. And then you will begin to understand yourself and the world. Namaste, so it is.